time of year again to start getting our flu shots. But how does the vaccine really work, and who should get it and who shouldn't get it? Well, joining us this morning is Dr. Elizabeth Salata with more on the flu shot and as well as the supply. Thank you so much for coming in.
Absolutely, you're welcome.
So what is the situation right now? What is the timing of the flu shot? Like, here's the situation here in San Diego.
We all have our flu vaccines in our clinics, so we're ready to go. And the flu hasn't actually started coming into the county yet. We haven't really reported cases of it. But if people want to get their vaccines, we have them available. In my opinion, it's a little bit soon. I'd wait another week or two because the peak immunity happens about 6 or 8 weeks, and the season really is in the next couple of months, so November through about March. And they're also recommending this year, that's a little bit new, to vaccinate longer. Usually we go through about December, and the CDC is recommending that we vaccinate into January or so to give increased protection, since we do have a surplus of vaccine this year that we didn't have last year.
Okay, so all the supplies are ready to go, but people should wait a little bit until it gets to that peak period to get the optimal effect.
I have some people, though, that I have vaccinated because they're going to be traveling within the next month or so, or they're going to places where the flu has already been reported, so I have been vaccinating a few people for those circumstances.
Now, there is a whole process in the whole manufacturing process. It doesn't just show up. There's a whole process that it goes through. So it is here in San Diego on shelves, and we take a look at some of the complicated processes. How does that work?
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, you think, okay, flu vaccine's here, but it's really a year-long, year-round process, because the World Health Organization actually surveys all year round for strains of virus that are going around, and then they pick the most common 3 to produce vaccine supply. And the trick is that they're not accurate every year. They try to be as accurate as possible, but some years they are better than others, put it that way.
I see. How is it different this year than it was last year?
Well, it's hard to know.
They don't know.
It's really hard to know. They've done their best to try to pick the top 3, but until the flu actually starts circulating, because the strains also change as they circulate, so they do their very best to try to target, you know, the most common strains, but then things change as the season goes on, so it's really hard to know.
Now we know how it gets to that process, but how does it really work, like in your system? And we were talking earlier, some people, obviously we want the elderly and younger children to take it, but for healthy, normal adults, like, I've actually never had a flu shot because I just figure, well, I'll save it for some other people and I don't really need it. But what's the drawback of that?
Well, it's really important to think about this globally. It's not just you that's involved, because, again, the highest risk of people developing complications from the flu are going to be children under 5 and people over 65. The complications include, like, pneumonia and things like that require hospitalization. So even though you or I, if we got the flu, we'd be okay other than missing work, we're going to pass it along. And passing it along is the problem, because then we infect our children or we infect our, you know, elderly adults. And the trick is, too, that, say, kids start passing it around in school, they actually transmit the virus up to 10 days, whereas you and I will only transmit it for about 5. And also, we'll be passing the virus along before we're sick. So we don't really get symptoms until about 2 to 5 days. So we can actually be infected with the virus, passing it along, and then not be sick. So that's part of the problem. Whereas if you're immunized, you get immunized and exposed to the killed, inactivated virus. It's not a live virus. So there's a little bit of a myth, because people think, oh, I'm going to get sick from the flu shot.
They get a flu shot and then they get sick.
Well,
and they don't want
the
to deal with
trick is that you've probably been exposed to something already, and you get your flu shot, which makes your immune system busy working on fighting the flu, and then you get sick with whatever you were infected with, some other virus. So it's really not the flu vaccine that's made you sick. It's sort of coincidental, because you've probably been exposed to something else, but your system's busy trying to fight, you know, make you immune against the flu.
I see. And there are processes of how we become immune, so it actually goes into your system, so you don't actually get sick from it, but it does produce antibodies.
You get your vaccine, and then it takes, you know, a couple of weeks before your body starts to make antibodies which protect you, and you're not fully protected for about 6 or 8 weeks. And if you get exposed to other viruses within that period of time, you could get sick from something else that isn't the flu, but it feels awfully similar.
So it is safe. There is no drawbacks.
Well, you know, there's certain people that shouldn't get the flu shot. People with egg allergies, because the way the flu vaccine is made, they incubate it in eggs in order to replicate the virus and to process it. So people with any kind of egg allergy or certain protein allergies, they don't want to get it. There's a syndrome called Guillain-Barré syndrome. That's a muscle weakness disease that people should not get the flu shot. People with certain immune impairment shouldn't get it. Or if you're sick at the time with something, you know, like a pneumonia or a real severe febrile illness, you probably shouldn't get it at that time.
So you should wait till you're better. What about pregnant women?
Pregnant women, usually it's the second and third trimester that it's recommended. The first trimester, you want to really avoid it unless, there's a real problem. But in general, the second and third trimester are the better times to get vaccinated.
Great. And there are clinics right now in San Diego that are offering, and also a lot of employers as well.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, to keep people at work.
Okay, thank you so much for giving us the full wrap-up of the flu shot.
Absolutely.
And if you guys would like more information, you can always log on to fox6.com.